Thank you very much for your interest in our press conference today. I will start by mentioning a few words in the context of that the European Commission has published recently its economic forecast, and we have discussed at breakfast the economic situation in the EU. Thus, I would like to underline that the economic forecasts have become more and more important, especially in the volatile economic environment we face today. The European Commission has to be deeply aware that it has a great responsibility when these forecasts are published. Systematically underestimating the rate of growth, for example, has a direct impact on investors' perception and, by way of consequences, the credit cost. There is no need of reminding the role of forecasts play in formulating and assessing the national economic policies. After breakfast, I had a short discussion with Mario Centeno, the Eurogroup President. As agreed in January, I will closely coordinate with the Eurogroup President. This represents an important part of our work during the Ecofin presidency. Bearing in mind the close links between Eurogroup and the Ecofin work streams, I have proposed that the Ecofin President participates to ordinary Eurogroup meetings. Until our proposal is formalized, I will closely coordinate our work with Mr. Mario Centeno, and I thank him for his openness in our discussions. I want to underline that I will continue to promote EU cohesion during the Romanian presidency, both as Ecofin President and as the Romanian Minister of Public Finance. As a principle, and no matter what proposal or instrument we are to consider, there is an unavoidable non-euro area dimension to our debate. That's why we need to develop solutions for both euro area and non-euro member states, not for just a part of the EU. European System of Financial Supervision Review. At our last meeting in January, the Council held a policy debate on the EFCF review. At that meeting, we committed as presidency to work on the rest of the ESFS package, in order to complement the partial mandate we are already had on anti-money laundering. On this basis, the presidency has put forward a new compromise proposal on the other elements of the package, and I'm happy to report that the Council has now agreed on a strong mandate on the overall package. We look forward to starting as soon as possible the negotiations with the European Parliament on this important file. Commission communication towards a more efficient and democratic decision-making in EU tax policy. Today we have also exchanged views on the recent communication of the European Commission, where it invited to consider a transition to qualified majority voting in the area of EU tax policy. It is important to note that only the European Council has the right of initiative to change the voting rules set out in the treaties. So, our discussion today was without prejudice to any follow-up that the European Council might consider giving to this issue. Many of my colleagues indicated today that tax sovereignty is of a primary importance to many member states, and that unanimity rule often leads to the fast decision making. Some of the ministers today welcomed the fact that the political debate has begun on how to improve the decision making in the EU. I fully agree that we should continuously work on how to improve the functioning of the EU, and tax policy is just one of the areas that this debate could cover. Conclusions on the Fiscal Sustainability Report 2018. We have adopted Council conclusions on the Fiscal Sustainability Report 2018, which was released by the Commission in January. This is an important subject that concerns the sustainability of public finances in the Member States. The Council welcomed the report and took note of the fact that despite an overall improvement of EU public finances over the last few years, fiscal risks were still present. We invited Member States and the Commission to take into account these sustainability findings in their assessment and recommendations in the framework of the European semester. Recommendation of the discharge to be given to the Commission in respect of the implementation of the budget for 2017. The Council decided to recommend to the European Parliament to give discharge to the Commission in respect of the implementation of the budget for 2017. This means that we think, based on the report from the Court of Auditors, that the budget was managed well, and we welcome the significant decrease of the estimated error rate, even if we regret it is still above the materiality threshold of 2%. The Romanian presidency is pleased with this result and welcomes the error rate decrease trend of the last years of budget discharge. However, we hope that everyone is fully aware that this trend is not enough, that we still have to work on improving the efficiency of the system so that the error rate goes below the 2% threshold. I think this could be food for thought for the next presidency and, of course, for the next Commission and European Parliament. We encourage, therefore, the Commission and the Member States authorities to keep up the good work in managing and controlling the way European taxpayers' money is spent and strive for improvement. A strong majority of the Member States was able to endorse this well-balanced recommendation, and we think that the European Parliament can support this assessment when it takes its decision. Conclusion of the budget guidelines for 2020. I am glad to inform you that today we adopted the Council conclusions on the budget guidelines for 2020. These guidelines serve as an informal mandate for the Council in view of the first budgetary trialogue, spring trialogue, of the year, scheduled for 20th of March 2019, as well as political guidance to the Commission for drawing up the proposals for next year's budget. They are of particular importance since they concern the last year of the current multi-annual financial framework. We therefore pointed out that the budget will play a substantial role in delivering the Union's objectives and priorities. The text crafted by our Romanian presidency underlines the importance of prudent budgeting at EU level and leaving sufficient margins under the MFF ceilings. At the same time, the budget should provide sufficient resources for the successful completion of the current programs, including for payments. We encourage the Commission to pay due attention to the principles laid down in these conclusions in the preparation of the draft budget for 2020. And one last issue, carbon pricing and aviation tax. Another item on the agenda, introduced at the request of the Dutch delegation, referred to the issue of carbon pricing and aviation tax at the European level. The Council has taken note of the information provided by the Netherlands, and I think we will talk again on this subject. At this point in time, there is no legislative proposal made for the Council, but it is, of course, an important issue also on global scale. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. As regards today's Ecofin, first things first, so I would like to congratulate Mr. Philip Lane. Today, finance ministers endorsed his candidature for European Central Bank's Executive Board for a position of chief economists. The EU leaders will have a final say over this nomination, but I am convinced that Mr. Lane is the man we need. Moving to the legislative agenda, let me now thank AGEN and the Romanian presidency for reaching a general approach on the review of European system of financial supervision. I would also like to thank previous presidencies, especially Austrian presidency, for the efforts they have put in preparing the ground. Last month, I stood here in the room and called for an agreement on full package. It was not obvious, but now it's positive that indeed we have reached general approach on the full package. It's true that compromise reached does not have the same high level of ambition that European Commission's original proposal. But I would say the compromise reached is as good as we can get when we needed to compose a number of diverging views. So now it's important to allow for trilogues to start quickly and to work with a view of reaching political agreement between co-legislators still before European elections. Let me recall that the ultimate goal of this proposal is to reinforce the supervisory convergence across the EU. We are creating a capital markets unions where firms and investors can leverage the whole depth of the integrated EU markets. Also let me recall that the package also has an objective to make sure that our anti-money laundering rules are efficiently implemented on all EU countries. So ministers have given their full approach to this, their full backing of this approach. And today we also had important debate on the use of quality majority voting in the area of taxation. As you know, Commission has proposed in its communication a step-by-step approach to start with a qualified majority voting, where in issues where it's critical for combating tax fraud, combating tax evasion and avoidance, and in measures related to the administrative cooperation and mutual assistance among member states. Many member states welcomed the Commission's starting the debate on this issue, but true, as Minister said, views expressed were very different, which means more discussions will be needed. Thank you.
And now we open the floor to questions related to today's Ecofin agenda. Please mention your name and the media that you're representing. Over there, please.
Thanks, Michaela. This is Björk Sithmeyer from Politico. A question on the ESA's review to the Romanian finance minister. Actually, I'll have two questions, but the first on the ESA's review. Do you have a backup plan? I mean, there's about a month and a half until the parliament dissolves, and all due respect to calls for getting a deal done, it seems pretty unlikely when views are so diverging between the council and the parliament. A month ago, you said that maybe the idea was to focus on AML. Is there a backup plan at some point in the future, in the next month and a half, that if we can't reach a deal on the ESAs, we break off and continue with AML to at least make sure that we have standards on money laundering in the EU? And then just very quickly, if I could get your position as the Romanian finance minister on the Dutch pitch of an airline tax. I was wondering what you thought about that from the position of Bucharest. Thank you.
So, thank you for your question. All questions, depends. Yeah, so the ESA package is, as I said last time, and all of us, we stated that there is a very important subject for our financial institutions. Yes, there is a plan, is the same, the plan A, the only one we have, because I'm fully convinced that being so important as a subject at the EU level, also in the Parliament discussions will be on the same direction. It's true that between different issues there are still big difference between, let's say, the position of the Council and also the one from the Parliament. But as I said also last time, this is our strategy, and having the support of, let's say, all let's say actors involved, I'm sure that in this even short period of time we'll be able to pass to the trialogue. And for the second one, I'm acting as a president of the Ecofin, so I'm not going to make any comments on this, please.
Do you have a follow-up question?
Yeah.
Okay, please.
Sorry, thanks, and sorry, Paddy. Just then, to the Vice President, if I may ask then, are you worried that within 2 months then we will not have the sufficient money laundering safeguards in place that have allowed for the types of scandals like Danske Bank, ABLV, to materialize?
Well, on ESA's review, as Minister already outlined, we are working with the aim to reach agreement still before parliamentary recess. So trialogues will start already day after tomorrow. I intend also to participate and kickstart this discussion. And of course it will require very constructive engagement from all sides, from Council and Parliament. And from the Commission side, we are very much willing to work and assist the co-legislators in order that they can reach a compromise within limited time which we have. And we think this is important file. And both aspects in this file are important, updating the rules and ensuring more supervisory convergence on financial markets in general, which was our original SS review proposal, and also anti-money laundering part.
Paddy Smith, Irish Times. Two questions. Minister, I wonder, maybe I misunderstood you, but were you actually saying that that you feel that the Commission is involved in systematic underestimation of growth figures in its projections, or is that simply a theoretical discussion? And secondly, I wonder if the Commissioner could elaborate a bit on the discussion on QMV, and specifically the number of countries who said they were adamantly opposed to any transfer of sovereignty on this particular issue. You say that it needs more discussion. Is that not a nice way of saying that this is going nowhere?
So, shall I start now? Yeah. So, just to be very clear from the beginning, we don't know each other. So, but I always, when I'm saying something, I have also the arguments behind, obvious. Yes, it was a recommendation. I made it today to the Commission regarding this, let's say, reports, and trying to put in these reports all the figures, just to be very easy and correct for the ones which are interested about that reports, which are the figures, which are the forecasts, which are the final results. I think this is fair for the ones which are really interested by these reports. So this was my recommendation. It's based on facts. So.
Okay, so to come to the second question on qualified majority voting, it's maybe for a presidency to interpret the statements of different ministers, but as I said, views were clearly diverging, and indeed there were a number of ministers welcoming the fact that the Commission is starting the debate on the issues. There were a number of ministers indeed raising concerns or opposed to the idea. In any case, it's clear that what we are proposing in our communication is step-by-step approach, and if we can move in certain areas like combating tax fraud, evasion and avoidance, administrative cooperation, mutual assistance among member states, those are clearly cross-border issues where certainly it would help to have more efficient decision making. And what we heard actually also in our staged approach that, for example, there was more openness to discuss this first stage. Probably the next stage for some member states were more difficult, but in any case we see there is scope for discussion following today's debate, and we believe there is also a need for discussion because we see that on many tax files we are unable to make progress, even though we need to make progress at European level.
On the legislative side, we discussed EU program. I told my colleagues that I am personally fund for strategic investments. There are some tweaks to be made here of this instrument as compared to ESF. They extend to each package. The discussion was substantial, but I have shared with my colleagues and have approved the euro area recommendation, euro relation. The item will feature.
Speaking of looking ahead, it emerged from a discussion building on the success of Juncker plan, the
agreement on the remainder of the package. Do you really believe
the right approach from my point of view? That's why I proposed, and
Okay, and we are taking one last question, please.
Jack Schickler from MLEX. A question in particular for the Romanian presidency. A number of delegations today in relation to the ESA's review raised the changes to governance that are being proposed. Do you think that will be the trickiest issue in the trilogue negotiations that lie ahead, or if not, where do you see the potential stumbling blocks?
No, I don't think that. For sure, there are maybe more sensitive issues in this package, but we will see in the trialogue how the discussion will be. We will be also even present in the trialogue. I will try to be in the next, let's say, coming days, and not only. But we will see. We will see how the discussion will be. And as I said, I'm convinced that finally we will succeed to close this very important package for our financial institutions. If I made just one small remark about the recommendation I made, it will be made for all financial institutions, this type of recommendation.
Okay, thank you very much. Have a nice afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mulțumesc și eu.
Your interest in our press conference today. I will start by mentioning become more and more important, especially in the volatile economic environment we face today. Policies. After breakfast, I had a short discussion with Mario Centeno, the Euro presidency. Bearing in mind the close links between Eurogroup and the Ecofin work streams, I have proposed that the Ecofin president participates to ordinary Eurogroup meetings. I want to underline that I will continue to promote EU cohesion during the Romanian presidency, both as Ecofin develop solutions for both euro area and non-euro member states, not EFCF review. At that meeting, we committed as presidency to work on the rest of the ESFS with the European Parliament on this important file. Communication invited to consider a transition to qualified majority voting in the area of EU tax policy. Our discussion today was without prejudice to any follow-up that the European Council might consider giving to this issue. Fiscal Sustainability Report 2018. We have adopted Council conclusions on the Fiscal Sustainability Report 2000 give discharge to the Commission in respect of the implementation of the budget for 2017. This means that we think, based on the reports, this well-balanced recommendation, and we think that the European Parliament can support this assessment when it takes...
First, so I would like to congratulate Mr. Philip Lane. Today, finance ministers, they have put in preparing the ground. Last month, I stood here in the room and political agreement between co-legislators still before European elections.